Imagine a household where daily survival is a math equation that never quite balances. In extreme poverty, a family doesn't have the luxury of planning for next year, or even next month. They are digging a well every single day just to get a drink of water. And to keep from starving, every single person under that roof has to generate income. That harsh math forces 12-year-old Sonu into the workforce. Instead of sitting in a classroom, he spends his days wiping down tables and clearing dirty plates at a busy highway dhaba. His younger brother, 11-year-old Monu, works as a motor mechanic. He navigates an industrial floor filled with heavy machinery, exposed engine blocks, and the constant hazard of welding sparks. Then there is Raja. He's 9. He sits side by side with adult laborers in a hand loom factory, performing highly repetitive, exhausting manual weaving just to add a few more rupees to the family. And finally, 8-year-old Rani. She is sent out to scrub dishes and perform domestic chores to help her mother make ends meet. These 4 siblings are trapped in the Chotu culture. Chotu, a nickname meaning little one, is shouted across garages and roadside stalls. It masks a brutal daily reality. These kids face harsh reprimands, physical exhaustion, and continuous exploitation. They are treated as cheap, disposable labor right at the age they should be learning to read. When you see an 8-year-old washing dishes, the immediate, natural reaction is outrage. We expect the government to step in, pass a law, and strictly ban all child labor overnight. This flowchart demonstrates why a sudden, total ban actually backfires. Look at the inputs. If you implement a total legal ban while leaving unresolved poverty in place, the family's income completely collapses. The chart branches into 2 grim outcomes. Without that money, the family faces literal starvation. Or, out of sheer desperation, the child is pushed into underground exploitation. It works a lot like the prohibition of alcohol. Banning the product didn't stop people from drinking. It just created a toxic, unregulated black market. Expanding this underground node reveals the real danger of a blanket ban. When child labor is pushed into the shadows, the children lose all legal visibility. They are stripped of minimal public protections, shielding abusers from oversight, and leaving the child with no protection against physical violence or predatory recruitment. Writing an idealistic law doesn't rewrite economic reality. Without a massive socioeconomic safety net already in place to feed these families, a total ban doesn't save vulnerable children. It traps them in conditions far worse than the ones they started in. Recognizing this brutal math, the Indian government took a different approach in 1986. They passed the Child Labor Prohibition and Regulation Act. The philosophy behind the law is pragmatic. Since extreme poverty makes it impossible to stop all children from working immediately, the state must strictly prohibit work that is physically fatal and tightly regulate the labor that remains inevitable. To figure out exactly where to draw that line, the government created the Technical Advisory Committee, or TAC. This is a specialized panel of experts responsible for analyzing different industries and telling lawmakers exactly which jobs are too hazardous for a developing human body. This split classification chart illustrates how the TAC divides labor into 2 columns. On the left are prohibited occupations, places a child cannot be, like railways or mines. On the right are prohibited processes, actions a child cannot perform, like working with toxic chemicals or heavy machinery. If we apply this to our 4 siblings, the law draws a hard boundary. Monu's auto shop with its welding tools and Raja's handloom factory both fall firmly into the strictly prohibited zone. Employers caught using children for those specific tasks face severe penalties. Enforcing these boundaries took aggressive legal action. A major public interest lawyer named M.C. Mehta filed a landmark Supreme Court case against the state of Tamil Nadu to force the state to inspect and enforce these exact hazard definitions. The Mehta court case focused heavily on the matchstick and fireworks industry. The court ruling was highly specific. The actual manufacturing of matches involved highly combustible chemicals and is lethally hazardous. It is completely banned for children. However, the court ruled that packing the finished matches could be heavily regulated, as long as it was done in a completely separate building away from the explosives. For the children who fall outside the prohibited zones, like Sonu wiping tables at the dhaba, The act enforces survival standards. It limits his total working hours, mandates basic health and safety, and subjects employers to massive fines or jail time for any abuse. The TAC and the 1986 Act operate as a legal firewall. They concede that an ideal childhood is currently out of reach for millions, opting instead to secure their sheer physical survival until the root disease of poverty is cured. The survival trap creates a ripple effect that begins in a single family and eventually touches the entire state. When an environment is defined by exploitation rather than education, the long-term consequences become systemic. When we deny a child the right path of schooling and moral structure, we effectively hand them a wrong path. A child who grows up being treated as a disposable tool for labor is conditioned to live outside the standard rules of society. This experience forms the base of the illegal economy. Because these youth are unprotected and already accustomed to harsh, dehumanizing treatment, they are the first to be recruited for illegal work. The crime that emerges later isn't an accident. It's the result of a childhood where the only path offered was one of exploitation. This line graph projects the massive macroeconomic cost to the entire nation. As the number of children pulled out of school and put into manual labor rises, the country's long-term economic growth potential declines. You are trading away your human capital, ensuring the next generation's workforce is physically and intellectually stunted. The 1986 Act is ultimately a tourniquet on a bleeding wound. It acknowledges the harsh truth that a legal document cannot magically erase systemic poverty or instantly fill empty stomachs. It is a holding pattern, because a nation cannot build a prosperous, stable future while the foundation of its economy rests on the breaking backs of its children.